What if the strongest leader is the one who never tries to control you? No orders, no pressure, no expectations, just freedom. And yet somehow, you'd still follow him anywhere. That is the paradox of Monkey D. Luffy in One Piece. Because Luffy doesn't lead through authority, he leads through moral freedom. A rare kind of leadership where people don't stay because they're told to, they stay because they choose to. From the very beginning, Luffy's philosophy is clear. He wants to be the Pirate King, not to rule over others, but to be the most free person on the sea. And that distinction is important. Because most people associate leadership with control, giving orders, setting rules, enforcing structure. But Luffy rejects that model completely. He doesn't try to dominate his crew. He doesn't shape them into what he wants them to be. Instead, he allows them to be fully themselves. And this creates something powerful, because when people feel free, they become loyal, not out of obligation, but out of connection. Luffy's crew is not built on hierarchy, it's built on trust. Each member has their own personality, their own goals, their own identity. And Luffy doesn't interfere with that. He doesn't demand that they change. He doesn't force them to align with him. He simply accepts them. And in that acceptance, something shifts. Because when someone sees you for who you are, and still stands by you, it creates a bond that is difficult to break. This is why Luffy's leadership is so effective. Because it's not based on control, it's based on respect. But here's where it gets deeper. Luffy's freedom is not passive. It's not about doing nothing. It's not about avoiding responsibility. In fact, it's the opposite. Because while he gives others freedom, he takes full responsibility when it matters most. When his friends are in danger, he doesn't hesitate. He steps forward. He protects. And in those moments, his role as a leader becomes clear. Not because he commands, but because he acts. This creates a balance. Freedom for others, responsibility for himself. And that balance is what defines his moral code. Luffy does not control people, but he protects them. He does not tell them what to do, but he stands with them when it counts. And that combination creates trust. Because people don't need to be controlled when they feel safe. They don't need to be forced when they feel understood. And Luffy provides that environment. There's also something important about how Luffy makes decisions. He doesn't overanalyze. He doesn't get caught in complex strategies or calculations. He follows his instincts, his sense of right and wrong. And while that may seem simple on the surface, it reflects something deeper. Clarity. Because Luffy's morality is not influenced by external pressure. It's not shaped by what others expect. It comes from within. And that internal clarity allows him to act with confidence, even in uncertain situations. But this approach also comes with risk. Because leading without control means trusting others to make their own decisions. It means accepting that things won't always go as planned, that people may fail, that outcomes are not guaranteed. And that requires a different kind of strength. The strength to let go. The strength to allow others to grow through their own experiences. The strength to support without controlling. And this is where many leaders struggle, because control feels safe. It creates predictability. It reduces uncertainty. But it also limits growth. It prevents people from fully stepping into their own potential. Luffy avoids this by doing something simple but powerful. He believes in his crew, even when they doubt themselves, even when they struggle, even when they make mistakes. And that belief gives them the confidence to rise. Because when someone trusts you, it changes how you see yourself. This is why Luffy's influence goes beyond his immediate circle. It affects everyone he encounters, because his presence challenges people's perceptions of themselves, of others, of what's possible. He doesn't force change, he inspires it. And that's the difference between control and influence. Control demands compliance. Influence creates transformation. Luffy operates through influence, but there's another layer to his character. His understanding of freedom is not selfish. It's not about doing whatever he wants at the expense of others. It's about creating a space where everyone can pursue their own path without interference. And when that freedom is threatened, he acts. Because for Luffy, freedom is not just a personal goal, it's a principle. Something worth protecting, something worth fighting for. And this is where his moral strength becomes clear. Because he doesn't impose his values, but he stands by them. He doesn't control others, but he defends what matters. And that combination creates a leader who is both powerful and grounded. Luffy also teaches us something important about identity. He doesn't try to be someone he's not. He doesn't change to fit expectations. He doesn't adapt his personality to gain approval. He remains consistent, authentic, regardless of the situation. And that authenticity is what draws people to him. Because in a world where many people adjust themselves to fit in, someone who remains true to themselves stands out. And that creates trust. Because people know what to expect. They know where he stands. They know who he is. And that consistency makes his leadership stable. At the end of the day, Luffy's story is not about becoming a ruler. It's about becoming someone others choose to follow. Not because they have to, but because they want to. Because real leadership is not about control. It's about freedom. The freedom to be yourself. The freedom to grow. The freedom to choose. And the willingness to protect that freedom no matter the cost.